to the In-Between-Man podcast, where Butch, men can be men. Holy cow, what a day. It's Friday, and we are going to be finishing up on the State of American Men 2025 research study by finishing up with headline number 8, and then we're going to wrap it all up in a conclusion based on some of the suggestions that they have after putting together all this research. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. We have a sort of an introductory playlist that if you wanted to spend some time, learning a little bit more about me or what we're trying to accomplish, how we're going to do that, where we're going to do that, there's some introductions that you could check out to see whether or not you like the content that I'm providing, are interested in the content that I'm providing, and if it's just right for you. It's an opportunity for you to get to know me and what we are going to do here going forward. I just gotta say right out of the gate that my New York Giants look really good. Now, I've been saying that for a lot of years. I mean, like a lot of years. But there was something when I watched them last night on Amazon that I was just like, yes. And if you're a New England Patriots fan, well, I'm sorry. We fucking killed you twice. Even when you had an undefeated season. Doesn't really matter when you get to the playoffs, does it? All right, let's get into it. So this last headline for the State of American Men study is men and women want better care policies, which is okay. And when I started to think a little bit more about what that headline was and some of the data that it came back with, it made more sense why they had this 8th headline. So let me just share with you, I'm not going to get into all the detail, but let me just share with you some of the data that confirms why men and women are looking for better care policies provided to us by our state or federal government. So men and women are overwhelmingly support care policies. So for example, percentage of fathers and mothers who agree with the following statement: employees would be happier and more productive if they had access to subsidized childcare. 87% of men agree with that statement, and 91% of women agree with that statement. A 4-day work week would allow caregivers to get better work-life balance. 85% of men agree with that. 86% of women agree with that. Those who care for their family members should receive some type of subsidy benefit. 84% of men agreed with that. 84% of women agreed with that. All parents should have paid time from work to spend with their children. 83% of men agree with that. 85% of females agree with that. All employees should receive child care services from their employers. 79% of men agree with that, and 83% of women agree with that. And it just kind of gives you a perspective on some of the challenges that I think all of us are facing, is even when men are now like not being considered or having to take on the responsibility because women want to have more say in their careers, and traditionally they would stay home, and guys would just go out and do the best that they can, and your wife would take care of the kids and all the things that were associated with that. Now that that's not really the default approach now, and both parents are providing caregiving services whether they want to or not, having subsidies from the state and local government, I think just also speaks to the fact that how much we're struggling. You know what I mean? Like how much we're struggling with making that transition and financially being okay. A majority of men and women say they would vote for care policies. Paid parental leave, 61% of fathers and mothers support this. Child tax credits, 64% of fathers and mothers support this. Subsidized child or elder care, 64% of fathers and mothers would support this. Dads are calling for investment in resources closer to home. This is a quote. I think we should focus on Trump and I think we're so focused on Trump and Biden and all those before that we missed that Congress is actually the one making laws and the state legislature and our local and our mayors and our city council. And so bringing that funding back, mandating to have support for trauma for men, whatever that trauma may be, what I need the government is to pass the funding this way. All right. So, I get it. Now, the rest of the data is just really more quotes, just supporting that perspective, that feeling to, vote for more services that subsidize that kind of stuff. So we don't need to get all that crazy into that data. But, now is an interesting dynamic. And this is one of the challenges that I see with, research, like this, because they're taking what they think they're taking the results that they've received. They're obviously analyzing them and they're coming up with solutions that they believe would add value to men as a whole. I mean, obviously women here too, because there's women that are included within this survey. But I don't know if they really think about what they're suggesting and how realistic it is. And I understand these are just suggestions, but some of them may be pretty good, but they aren't going to follow through on what they're suggesting. They're essentially saying, this is the direction someone needs to go in who's enjoyed reading this survey and wants to point any of their time and resources to solving some of the fundamental challenges that we're up against. And I don't know how much I agree with all that. There's a difference between making suggestions based on data, and then there's a reality of actually getting it done, and they're two very different things. So suggesting what you think could be done in hopes that it does work isn't very helpful. I would probably look for more concrete answers, but they don't want to take a side, or they don't want to, open themselves up to criticism that may not have worked. You know what I mean? So here are 4 different solutions that this survey has put together that I'm going to share with you. Which the first one is lean into men's caregiving and their sense of purpose for fatherhood. Now, I get that. But I don't know if going down that road is most productive for men. When I think about what it is that we could do to help men, not only, appreciate the fact that they're caregiving for their children and playing an active part in them growing up, which is, a wonderful thing. But in this day and age, none of that is really being considered. And what I mean by that is I've been told by my ex-wife and a lot of other people what they're not going to tolerate, that they're going to be a stay-at-home mom. So I don't know if I necessarily fell into the idea that I was super excited about, caretaking and being at home. But I wanted to. I wanted to do that. I grew up with my stepfather who stayed at home, and having a stay-at-home dad is wonderful, and I loved it. But I would probably say that instead of going down that road, I think that there's a fundamental problem with men, and I happen to believe that that fundamental problem stems with certain attributes and behaviors that are still being taught to men that are harmful. And specifically, the idea of being emotionally stoic and not talk about your feelings and stuff them. Like I'm betting the farm on that. Like, I think that if we can help men figure out a way to overcome that reaction to emotional trauma or emotional dynamics, and give them a process that can help them determine what's in the best interest for you, as opposed to it being dictated to you, that would be beneficial. That's what I think. So, yeah, I mean, this is not bad, and I agree with it. Like, but to lean in on it, I don't know. I'd probably lean in on other things that would directly impact how men should take care of themselves, not only from an emotional standpoint, but from, physical standpoint, creating boundaries and setting a clear example of what expectations that individual wants and is going to work through with their significant other. So lean into men's caregiving and their sense of purpose from fatherhood. Here's another one, which I get, and it makes sense, but engage boys in conversations on aspirational ideas about manhood. And so, do you know what aspirations means? I mean, it's a big word. Refers to strong desires, ambitions, or goals that someone has. When I think about when I was, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I didn't want to sit down with anybody and figure out what my aspirations and goals were. I was thinking about, playing sports. I was thinking about, getting laid, being with girls. Like, this was not my primary focus, but it's about the ideals about manhood. So that brings up an interesting point, which is, if we're able to rewrite a narrative, a social narrative, about what it is that men are valued on and have a say on what that is, then that provides an alley for us to communicate with boys, to give them what it is that they need outside of what's been already provided, and suggested something new where they may consider, aspirations. I don't think boys want to have a conversation like that. And I don't know if it's the best. I mean, boys are boys. Yeah, well, I mean, we should have a conversation with them, but aspirations about manhood? Okay. Rewriting some of the old traditional norms and having a new narrative for those certainly sounds like a good time, but actually having a father that's implementing those changes for that child, I think, would be much more effective, right? So give the men a process that will help them evaluate their emotions and understandings about their emotions so that they can work through them in a positive way, and then teach kids how to do that as well. That seems more like a better answer to me. Support young men's need for mentorships, coaching, and apprenticeships. Totally agree. I think, when I think about what it is that I want to do with this podcast and what I'm hoping to accomplish with services that are aligned to this podcast, is creating a methodology, personal growth methodology that will empower the individual who decides to do it, a process by where they can review whatever. Oh, shit. Man down. They can review whatever their actions were in any given process, whether it be personal, whether it be professional, whether it be relationship specific. Like, having a process to be able to say, I'm accountable for this and I'm not accountable for that because that's somebody else's responsibility or that's somebody else's opinion, is really the goal. If we can get men to a place where they're able to understand what and how they reacted and responded in an angry way, and why were they angry and what it was about angry that made them react that way, and hold them accountable to that, I think that'd be super beneficial, right? Because men don't have a process to do that now. And if they feel angry, they're going to act out in rage and deal with whatever the consequences are, let alone trying to figure out why they're angry. Or the same man who's angry turns that sideways into sadness and just goes and isolates in a room and doesn't think about talking with anybody about what's bothering them because they're just so sad and they don't want to ask for help. You know, so creating a process that will help men identify where they were emotionally stoic at a young age and why that's not conducive for their mental health, help them understand why that transpired, and then give them tools to understand what part they had in it and what part they didn't have in it. I mean, a lot of these times, you know, going through these processes when you're, 10 or 11, 12 years old, I mean, understanding dynamics that are happening doesn't make them right or wrong. It just helps you understand what transpired and what that future foundation or what that foundation that was being set at that age meant for you going forward, right? Like how it was projected throughout the rest of your life. So having a mentorship, having coaching and apprenticeships, I think is a brilliant idea. I think being able to provide men who are willing to provide that type of free service, or I don't know, maybe it's a coaching service that you can charge money for that. But most coaches, don't get paid a lot unless it's college or professional. And, it's a thankless job. They do it because they're passionate about it. But to give coaches tools to help their boys not only become better football players and better teammates, and better at whatever their sport is, helping them understand what type of emotional process they could go through that's healthy and beneficial would also be a great aspect as well. And if we have men that are coaches that believe in that, I mean, that'd be great. I mean, apprenticeships, look, I think of, trades, like, when I think of apprenticeships, I think of like electrical apprenticeship, plumbing. I think of auto body. I think of HVAC, like, oil rig, roughneck. Like apprenticeships in those trades, you're learning real fast what's tolerated, what's going to be tolerated and not tolerated of you, I don't know if you've seen Landman, but when the kid orders a latte and all the other guys in the trucks are behind him and they all go, "Oh shit, a fucking latte, Mr. Freaking Latte guy over here. Now we're waiting for a coffee." And then all the other guys in the trucks that are behind him are like, "What the fuck's going on? Like, who's ordering something different?" They're like, "Barry fucking ordered a latte and we got to be waiting." And they're all beeping their horn and he makes them feel like a freaking idiot. And it's great because that's how you learn. But not many kids, young kids, are interested in the trades business. They're more interested in coding and video games and being like, Nick Merckx or Tim the Tap Man or other people like that because they prefer to play video games than figure out how to hook up a 120 outlet. But I could be wrong. Finally, engage online influencers to tell stories of young men finding connection and purpose. I am going to make right here, right now, on this podcast that you're listening to, I am going to commit to reaching out to some online influencers. Holy shit, did that really come out that way? Online influencers that I know of, that my kids know of, that are very popular right now. Like I had mentioned to you, there's folks like Nick Merckx, there's folks like Tim the Tap Man, and then there's even YouTube channels that men and younger men have built up that are really successful. And how did they do that? And what got them into that? And what inspired them to do that? Like those like my son, my youngest son, has a device that you could put on your face. It's like a virtual reality device. And I think that his mother got it for him when he was, or on Facebook. It's one of those Facebook virtual reality things. And so when he was here, because back then my wife lived locally and my son would come visit me every 2 weeks, he would bring his virtual reality headset and would get into playing this one game. It was like apes running around and jumping around and doing stuff, and he freaking loved it, loved it. And so he got into it, and then he found Discord, and he started, building up, creating a Discord server. He got like 5,000 people to sign up for this. This is kids his age. He started a YouTube channel. I mean, at the time, he was only 14 years old. Those are the kind of skills that I'd be like, get after it. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, he got obsessed with the Discord communication and all that stuff, and it got to a point where we had to peel it back a little bit. But those are the kind of skills that I think a younger generation like my youngest kid, could really leverage. Understanding how YouTube works, understanding what SEO means, understanding what keywords means, understanding how you have a Discord server and what that means, and what even is Discord. I knew what the tool was, but I didn't have a really good idea till later on. And maybe if it's not Discord, what about Patreon? You know what I mean? What about creating a Patreon community? There is a big push, and has been a really big push, for community building. And I can tell you that during COVID, I had a YouTube channel. You can check it out. It's called Sign, SIGN Fairies, FAIRIES. And my wife and I put this business together, and it was a sign business where we would go to people's houses during COVID when they couldn't have Tommy and Billy and Stephanie come over for their son for their birthday. We would go deliver these corrugated signs of happy birthday, showing for moms, allowing to show their kids how much they love them. And we freaking were killing it. And so I created a YouTube channel, and it I won't say it exploded, but I got monetized in under 90 days. It was incredible. And, building communities of men like this, or even in my case with my science fair, these were all women. They were all women, and they were super engaged, and they were older women. Now, the same applies for, younger kids as well. They're more on top of what's happening in the real world, or even in the online world. And that's even more exciting because they're up to speed on how all that stuff works. But that is the solution number 4, engage online influencers to tell stories of young men finding connection and purpose. So I'm going to make a commitment that, starting this weekend and going into next week, that I will try to reach out to some online influencers to see if I could get them to come and share their story, maybe like a long form on how they got started, what inspired them to get started, why did they go in this direction, who were some of their influences, what sense of purpose have they got out of doing this now, can they make a living out of it, how hard is it to make a living out of it, like those kinds of things I think would be really good to understand, to further evaluate whether or not these kinds of things about helping younger people understand about just different business opportunities and entrepreneurship that, we never thought about at their age. But there's people making shitloads of money at AdSense, YouTube revenue. And, that's part of the goal here. I want to create a community of like-minded men where maybe if we can get together in a Discord place, talk about going out into our communities and providing free mentorship to, young kids if they're wanting to learn more, or things of that nature, and providing a service where if you've never gone through the process of, being accountable for some of the things that you may have been control of, or some of the things that you may not have been control over, but creating a process that's repeatable to help you understand what your part is in it, whatever it is, whether it be relationships with your wife, whether it be relationships at work. I mean, most people have a good understanding about that kind of stuff, but a lot of people don't. And if you grew up stuffing all your feelings when it comes to anything emotional or anything like you're fear-based about, you're just going to stuff it and ignore it. And it's going to come out sideways. You're going to be angry. You're going to be abusive. You're going to be emotionally abusive. You're going to be a dick. And it could go even sideways worse, where you're so much of a dick that you have nobody to be around. No one wants to be around you anymore, that you just, dig yourself into a big hole and, you carve out your life in this 6-foot ditch underground, just being lost and broken. And nobody wants that. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think we're going to keep it short and sweet today. And I am going to move on to some other topics outside of the State of American Men 2025 survey. And I think I'm going to start focusing more on the traditional male value system and how the modern male value system are different and what that means, and where could we help men start to identify areas where they could consider taking some accountability in what happened today, tomorrow, 5 years, 20 years ago. That's the goal. And if you haven't checked out our Etsy store, you can go there. The link is in the description. We have a lot of other videos on our YouTube channel that speak to other areas just like this for men. But, do me a favor, get the word out. If you could, leave a comment. I had someone yesterday, I do my podcasting through Buzzsprout. Is that what it is? Buzzsprout? Yeah. And someone listened to 13 episodes in one day. I don't know if that's a bot or I don't know what that is, but I was stunned. Anyway, I want to provide content that men know they want to hear, but aren't willing to hear it right now. It's totally okay to be emotionally vulnerable. I'm not saying that it isn't hard. I'm not saying that you can't do it. I just think men are so adverse to even thinking about it or listening about it or talking about it because they're just so afraid of what they might uncover. And that's okay. But 9 times out of 10, what they uncover isn't half as bad as what they projected on themselves. And it allows them to set themselves free. And creating a process to do that, more to come on that. And anyway, that's all I got. Do yourself a favor, do me a favor, get yourself a beverage. This one's a little watered down sugar iced tea. I feel like I'm in the iced tea mood today, and it's quenching. Let me just, nice. I haven't had a Fresca since our last episode, but listen, guys, I'll see you in there.